He would like force me
That's the one that's been published.
This terminology is changed so that you can see what is considered.
He's actually a very fast learner. Poor guy though. You know, in the beginning I assumed he and was had some of what he started doing. You can review something again. Try to convince him of that. But it's not. Math is just a language. Everything you write now, first time you can say a sentence, you can say, what is x squared plus x cubed? You can also say, what is x times x plus x times x times x? Like anything, it's like all about you. Really just a shorthand for a way to talk about it. It's just like learning rules of grammar, like x times x plus x squared. It's just grammar rule. Once you know that grammar rule, then you can combine it. Try to get to think about it that way.
Yeah, those are, I mean, if you look at those,
Yeah, yes,
literature.
He has to be his teacher. I appointed myself. But yeah, I think actually hearing it from different people in formats, hearing it more than explain. Are you going to invite?
That's why I took the Japanese
Do you know where specifically?
Yeah, it's just not the greatest translation. Wonderful, and you know what we're not really impressive is commentary is very very straightforward.
They're not Buddhists at all, but they want to clarify what's her name for a year. She's not Buddhist, and she stayed with us and worked with the texts. I know, she's a cool person.
Sangin Seti, Nisabi, Tigaras Tang and Nutula Suga, Tobaka, Sadi, Economus, that Jimmy Seti, Jima Pacha, the Jeva, Pambe Indians. That Jimmy Seti, Pambe Indians, Pambe Indians. Shibuya Dende Simi, Nambu Kani, but in it, Tartu, Tarbas, Jimmy's that year Majid Tingi, Tarbatis, Tarbat, Tarbat, I am but the Shishibe, the Shishiba Ibe, Ninja Sanji, Tartu, Tartu, Shivers, that the Shishibas. That is a
Ninja Ranjele, correct?
Tartuba. Tartuba is a Deshishiba in this, Deshishibas. What the thing?
So we have in the Tibetan a verse which does not appear, as far as I can tell, in the Sanskrit, either in the root text. It's actually part of a passage that's in the commentary following root 87, verse 87, root verse 87. And it's prior to, in the commentary, oh, there it is in English. Okay, so I don't know where this verse is in the original Sanskrit. That doesn't matter. In the English, it says, liberation, wait a minute, maybe this is prose and then it's kind of rendered in verse in Tibetan. Oh yes, I believe it is. Okay, so, actually maybe that is a verse.
I think so.
Huh? It is a verse. It's in the commentary passage after verse 87. It's not a root text verse, but it's a verse. And in the English it says, it's prefaced by, in parentheses or brackets, it says, so to say, liberation is of the characteristic indivisible from the properties, which are of all kinds. Turn off the phone, please. Innumerable, unthinkable, and immaculate. This liberation, that is the Tathagata. So this, which is a verse, this text doesn't identify the source of the verse. It is presumably a canonical verse. So this verse is indicative of this last quality that relates to the spiritual lineage of the Tathagata, in which that spiritual, not spiritual lineage, but the ultimate nature of the Tathagata is undifferentiable from all the Tathagata's qualities. They are one and the same nature. So this verse uses the following language. It says, first of all, it says the properties which are of all kinds. So in Tibetan, that's the Namba Tamje. Namba Tamje means that the Buddha's knowledge, one aspect of the Buddha's knowledge is what is called knowledge of the wide-ranging. Gachoe yunten, gachoe yunten, gachoe kimba.
And the thing that Gang never said
So the first characteristic is that these qualities are innumerable. So innumerable means that the Buddha's ultimate knowledge, especially, is a form of knowledge of relative truth entities which are of great diversity, which are many different types. If you take physical form, for instance, physical form comes in many shapes, comes in many different sizes, comes in many different colors. And in a similar way, all the objects to be known have literally a diversity which cannot be counted, which is beyond numbering. So the qualities that are characteristic of what is attained when the spiritual lineage has reached the state of perfection has this aspect to it, that the qualities are innumerable first. And the second one is samme. Samme means they are, as the translation says here, unthinkable. But unthinkable means really, it means beyond comprehension of dualistic mind. The samme said the savecho, right? So generally the word, yeah, so generally the word achintya, it doesn't necessarily mean the profound in the sense of emptiness. Achintya means something that is difficult to comprehend. In that sense, unthinkable, meaning difficult to comprehend, difficult to understand, difficult to fathom. Then the next characteristic is that it's immaculate. The characteristics are immaculate, or the characteristic of being immaculate refers to the fact that the Dharmakaya, which is the perfected form of spiritual lineage, is characterized by you have abandoned all the temporary statements, right? So immaculate in that sense. No. So then this form of the perfected spiritual lineage is moksha, is liberation, is freedom. And that freedom has the characteristic, has the lakshana, means it has the defining characteristic, or the essential characteristic, that it is not a state which is distinct from knowledge of all the vast diversity of knowable things, not distinct from the quality of being able to comprehend what is difficult to comprehend, and not distinct from the quality of having eliminated all the faults. That these attributes are inseparable in nature from what we want to say is the highest form of liberation. That is distinct from the liberation of the Hinayana arhats, for instance. And that highest liberation, which in the verses was being described as by the synonym of the Dharmakaya, and that is Buddha, that is Tathagata, that is what it means to be referred to, that is what is referred to by the epithet, Tathagata, meaning it has this specific sense beyond a person who has become enlightened. That term Tathagata can be understood to refer to this state of having purified the spiritual lineage and being a state which is one with these characteristics these four qualities that were described.
That under the non-duty, they sit under the non-duty. 타르투게 남들에 시행이 된다. 제단 타르투가 숨도가 때문에 도지야 돼. 타르투가 숨도가 때문에 도야 봐. 타르투게 남들이 타르투게 이 이상 타르투 남들 숨이 봐. 얘들 남들 얘기 남들 이 공부진 타르투 이 남들도 저 예스 저렇게 단대지 탈tum에 남들 찍네 내가 때문에 되게
Just Ramduress.
풍시하지
Ramduress. Okay. So, so this particular verse quoted in the commentary, Asanga's commentary, which identifies the word Tathagata with the state of ultimate liberation, which is inseparable from those four qualities, and which is to be identified with the purified form of the spiritual lineage. And that presentation, that verse, which is a canonical verse, is taken, the import of that verse is to assert the notion of so this is interpreted as an assertion that justifies the doctrine of there only being one vehicle. Ekayana means there's only one ultimate goal, and all sentient beings will find their ultimate goal in Buddhahood itself. And so implicit in that is that it is saying that the distinct doctrine, the doctrine distinct from that, which also is expressed in certain sutras, is that there are three distinct vehicles. And in the Tantric, in the Tibetan language, it says Tartuk Tekpa Sum, which is to say, not only are there three distinct vehicles, that the beings who are destined to follow those vehicles will go no further than the liberation that each of those separate vehicles can bring. So as to say, when a person reaches the goal of the Hinayana nirvana, then that person will not develop beyond that. That person will enter that state of nirvana without remainder. And that's it. That person will not develop beyond that. And there are sutras which imply that or suggest that at the level of how, if they're taken on their face value. This verse, the import of this verse is to say that that doctrine is Neyartha. Neyartha means Gangun. It means it's not to be taken as what it says explicitly. Rather, it needs to be interpreted. The way it needs to be interpreted is that the correct view is that there's only one ultimate goal, and regardless of whether you follow each separate vehicle through to its individual liberation, ultimately every being will have to achieve, now has the capacity to, and will in fact achieve, that final liberation that is described here in this verse. So with that, 87, and then this commentary in prose that follows verse 87 finishes that entire discussion of those 10 subjects that clarify the nature of spiritual lineage. Now, in this next section is using the simile of the painter and the painting, which covers a few verses. This is the next topic.
다시 대참자기 사반의 인나 세디 참자기 share set the Savani ring say Savani ring say that is something.
Well, the someone being I'm something to try to them when you normal group in seven in the time in the time seven removing you better put that there. Did some job that so now transitional statement in the commentary before verse 88 in the English. Where do we start? It says here. Page. In English, it's identified as the parable of the painter. Now in the Immaculate Sphere, the Buddhas are possessed of all kinds of
Dini Pamba Tobe Ling Malu Sur Tobe Tony Tobe shared meetings. Teaching Timatadagi number Taba Nanguchunde Tomba Tembaringis. Digi Nanguchunde Tombaniti Tombaris. Kunto Tadagi Tombe. And the Tambati, Tambamais, study Rangdon, the Shen losing each other. The typical temperatures, Sunni Timanevati, Tima Tadari, Chini Tima Tadari, Taba, Nanguchon, Chonde Tombani temperatures. And then the chicken server university. The Nanguchon David Tomba temporary issues could Tata Tombe, and then the temperature Maris study. And then Shandong senior the Tomba initiative. Kundo Tombe Tomba, Shandong is. And the Tambati and Kundu meet Jenny, and the Tambati Kundu Tomaris, Kundu country Tomaris, and Shendo, Limishuji, Ran singing to the Tomat Maris, Ran singing to the Tomat, Random Seti, Shetty, Ran singing Panea, Tomani. I'm singing to the Tonga. Tirando is. So many Tirando singing to Buddhist together. The random is. Kundo Shenton Shenton is. Shenton said it. But it's just as this.
I'm tempting each other with Tombani, the Shenton over right.
Oh, the Kaji Shenton is. The random is Shenton. Maris, Tini in the Tunsian lectures. Telling in the Shandon in the Tunsian Maris. The Ralu did number times each other with Tony condensed. Only Canada, I see to the taunt. I see to the taunt. The Anicasa Chiso Parking the Garza. He down Manjo some Joy Yoga substitute. Number Chonde, I see the Karasuri. Kundu Shank on Marva, Kundu Shank on, and the thing Kundu Shank on each other. Just Kundu Shank on the Yamaris. He Rando is Rang singing to the Ton, Rang singing to Matuna. In the time, never achieved to Just a Shanto Maris, Rando is here. The Shanto said the Kundu listener. Tombani said the Kundu the Tomashachi, the Tombani is here, we should run to a motive. Rang singing to the Rang more Thompson, man do this. Rangshiri Mena, then the company of Rangshiri Randomaris, Rangshiri to the Tomaris, Kogaritoris, Kudushitoris, and all set.
So we have this lead in. Is established that there is an emptiness, which is, and this is a famous phrase, I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, it's a term. It is the emptiness which is endowed with every form of excellence. So Nabatanche means in every respect. Chok is in supreme qualities or excellent qualities. Nabatanche, every form of excellent qualities. Dangdemba means that emptiness is endowed with that quality. The emptiness, particularly of this state. Then this introductory statement says, in that sphere of the Tathagatas, meaning that ultimate nature of the Tathagatas, all the qualities are inseparable. That's what the previous topic was about. The Yerme, right? The undifferentiability between the qualities and this ultimate realm. So and then it's going to describe this using this parable of the painters. But just dealing with that term, right? That to say that that emptiness is endowed with every form of excellence. Then there, in this commentary, there is a reference to this Rantong Shentong position. The Tsongkhapa school is described as representing emptiness as Rantong. Rantong literally means to be void of itself, void of its own nature, which this other Tibetan traditions say is incorrect understanding of emptiness. So the correct way to understand emptiness is Shentong. So Shentong means to be empty of something else, something other than it. So emptiness is described as a state which is empty of all relative truth qualities. But that is not to say that emptiness does not have its own absolute nature. So the Gelugpa point of view is that that's a misinterpretation of emptiness because it implies that that ultimate truth has some real mode of being. And for the Gelugpas, the true interpretation of emptiness is that emptiness itself is the absence of any self-existent mode of being, which applies not only to relative truth things, but to emptiness itself. So that term, emptiness, which is qualified as the emptiness endowed with every excellence, then in this commentary, that point is sort of referenced. Number Tanji Yuchuan de Domini saying the Karsan Chubu Ketchur.
네, 근데 이제 남기네 좀 남구춘데 company 아니 시가 소리야. 제비가 수준의 추구들과 추구대 남구춘데기 company.
No, so this is a term that has significance. So it's a unique term. It's a Mahayanistic term. It can be understood as that the practitioner during the time of the path has an awareness of emptiness, the form of emptiness that is endowed with every form of excellence. There's even an interpretation of the term that relates to, in a fundamental sense, that is, given ordinary beings, what their natural state is, or their samsara condition. The term can be interpreted in relation to that state. However, its most salient interpretation is in terms of the Dharmakaya. You will assume the Tamja Zadeva.
Yeah, that's the Tower de Matos. Tower de Matos.
Tamboni, the Zavdeva, Tamjava.
Mingur. She, Belgium, Soros. That's I'm getting the number she could tell me. Mingur Shin She Belgius good dirty. Our tick good dirty.
Belgesos, right? Yosin Shepherd.
That's Sangi, the number she could tell me. Chimbala Sobe in the Matama never. Sober, Zobe, Tumitobe, Share Lolong in us. That is Lolong Ginegus Langi, no which under the company said it.
What is it? You will away.
La Tarete. That is Sangi in the said the Jason. How could they?
Shepherd Jess of the
Belgesos, data equity.
Number Kunchot, Tengitoni, Son of the Nishiki Sok, Gomba, Latin, Tobe, Yanda, Sangi, Kitchen, Logo, Jumatana, and didn't Jimbala so with Taki Chap, Mansan, Gyumed, Tishinila, Doctor, Yamashaka, Sangi, Shit, and Yinla, Spirit.
Deep dirty. The word is Sangi.
Lamjushu, the Kunchon, the Tomani, wants to do Tobe. She likes to drink things, right?
So cranky, the word Sangi, and the number she proves it, tell me. Shimbala Sube in them at home never. Sobe, Tobe, Sheriff Lolang, the me, he also toba, Taratuba, Sangi, the non-tuba Euro cent.
No, for the vanity, you do. German another
Jebeli,
some Jan another German.
and the tower water. Tower to the you get some jaddy shit as well. Some jagger water. You got tower la niece to go. Peta,
I'm sorry, I'm trying to find where Rich is reading, and he's reading a particular line. Tambolani, Tope, and Bombay, and Dire.
Sabami the yin she jare or the Malibay to the Toby Shira, meet and teach Jamatata. Language and the Tomba Yinji, Kundu Tata, the Temba, Temba Manji, Telani, the Chatus, a Mary Sheriff. Tanjitila. 벤지 참자라지.
Okay. Sangi again, the machine to which you have Jimala so we into my town or so it doesn't go Lobsang deep to but you
that is this one. That he person Langi Negati, Nambi Chundi Tumbani said. Yes, Jimbala so they say, Touch Jimbala so they. And then my son told the essay, then I'm going to Chongden said, number going to Denver. So the Tony to the therapy, but he knows about the day is long teacher. He knows about third to college and Sangi daddy. Then you could get on the Chongden.
Okay, so here this is a passage in Gyumed commentary, which is addressing this very term, which I mentioned. That is the emptiness which is endowed with every form of excellence. So in the commentary, it says, the qualities that pertain to a Buddha, the extraordinary, the unique qualities that pertain to a Buddha, these four, right, that were mentioned as being numberless, and being difficult to understand, and being in complete purity, and then the other one was what was it? Being every form of object. Then those four qualities, which are qualities of a Buddha, then the means of attaining those four qualities are then the path, right? Practicing the Mahayana path. So here it says, are subsumed within, okay, the method of achieving those qualities that are possessed by a Buddha, by a fully enlightened being. The means of achieving them the means is the wisdom which perceives emptiness, but which includes without remainder or without leaving anything out, the qualities of the other five paramitas of generosity and so on. So practicing emptiness in a way that does not exclude, which includes, and is supported by the practice of the other five paramitas, that wisdom, as it is practiced during the path, right? Lobsang means considered within the path of training. That is the path form of the wisdom that perceives emptiness, that is endowed with every form of excellence. Then when that wisdom is perfected, Yonsu-Dzogpa, when that is then developed fully to a Tar-Tupa means then to its highest form, and one becomes a Buddha, right? Sangyeva, and then you achieve all the qualities of the Buddha, and at that point, then you have achieved that form of emptiness, which is endowed with every form of excellence in its highest form. So when we speak of the Dharmakaya as the perfection of spiritual lineage, which is qualified by the emptiness of all of those ultimate forms of knowledge, right? That emptiness right? That purity, remember there were 3 stages of the spiritual lineage: impure, partially pure, and completely pure. So this completely pure form of the spiritual lineage is described by this term, the emptiness which is endowed with every form of excellence. That form of emptiness then is a form of emptiness that is achieved, that is characterizes Buddhahood and is called the Dharmakaya because it is endowed with not only the highest form of wisdom of emptiness, its nature, but it also is adorned with all of the qualities that come from having perfected the other paramitas, which represent the means aspect of the path. And therefore, we describe that emptiness as the emptiness that possesses every form of excellence. Okay? So that, and I was describing the Dharmakaya as qualified by the its own ultimate nature, which is the transformation of Buddha nature. As this kind of quality that is endowed with every form of excellence is now going to be presented in terms of this analogy of a painting.
따뜻해. 이러면 안 좋다. 그냥 지지 가인으로 쓸 수가. 자와. 이게 자와 링구치도가 되는 거지. 자와 링구치 지다 레몬. 제가 쓸 수가. 지다 레몬. 지지가 현다. 캐르다 강시야가 강시가 대신 니시 매발도 내는들라 인기 나의 순이 기시 제 나다 제도다 가이 레니 친구들 내가听제베데라
Okay, so now if you have the translation, then just scan through verses 88 through 92, which is a series of verses that present this, what's described here as a parable, but it's an analogy. So I'll read it for those who don't have it. 88, suppose there were some painters, each of them expert in a different sphere, so that whatever skill was possessed by one of them, the others could not understand. Then a mighty king would give them a painting cloth with the following commandment, or say order, right? On this cloth, ye shall draw my portrait. 89. Then the painters, having promised to the king, would start their work of painting. Of these engaged in this work, one would have gone abroad, so one is missing. Right? Because of his absence during his, I don't know what that is, this picture would remain without the completion of all parts. Thus the parable is made. So there's the same, imagine that a group of painters were, what's the word? Commissioned, yes, exactly. Commissioned to do a painting collectively. And each one knew certain skills, and some of them, the others did not know the skills that the others had. And they were all necessary to complete the painting. If one of them wasn't there, then the picture would remain unfinished. And if that one individual's work were not included. And then the last says, verse 92 says, the painters who are men here are, and then it says charity, generosity, morals, patience, and other dispositions. I'm not sure if that's translated. Disposition, but it says those samadaya means undertakings, those practices. Being endowed with all kinds of these excellence, the non-substantiality is called the picture. So let's see, the fact says, Namaking Children by Dylan, Roman Sutra. This painting is a representation, which is the metaphor for the emptiness that is endowed with the excellence, all the forms of excellence that pertain to the virtues of generosity and the rest.
That is which one they say the bcos is sharing. Bcos Gabriel this is sharing. Ngak could chance they used to tell you. Actually, remove Tambu, remove Janiet.
Yes.
Yantin should the ocean near the J. Sarashan near the Montuchi, Korea. Village Matana. And the Mutia Kuyos to Marva. Dina she said, and they Chibata, children of Sula, number 2, Dembachi.
No, sir.
Did Naiba, a Kusu Dishanga, Yamabuch could be as Musukanga Sana,
or
Kuti to Kuba,
or
Matana to Gumara.
okay.
Tina she, which they company Siati, Jimbala, so Jimbata, children of Sula. Theg number 2, and the son of the she so neat and timber.
No.
The lady Chubutilla, no, which should give me, which should take company here, but the pay when he shared.
So the analogy, maybe in reading the verses, I didn't present it in a especially clear way. So Rinpoche sort of paraphrased what the analogy is. The analogy is that the king would order that a painting should be made. In order to complete the painting, a group of painters is required, each one having his or her own special skill. And so in order for the painting to be completed, all of those painters must contribute their part. Otherwise, the painting would be missing something. So in a similar way, the emptiness which is endowed with every form of excellence, in order for it to rise to that level of emptiness, and the emptiness as possessed by the Buddha's Dharmakaya, it must be an emptiness which is reached through having perfected all of those qualities of the 6 paramitas in such a way that both the elements of merit and wisdom have been fully developed such that it takes on that unique quality that deserves being referred to as the emptiness which is endowed with every form of excellence. So the analogy should be understood that way.
That's the name.
Shila Sungje Ting the Dilre.
No thing Shila Sungji, thing the Chimbala so the Turkey Chai, no so by Jampa tea, me, Sonam that you see the tenant in a remote George Chepa, Kanda in Bataki, Tumba Chepe, Penyalas, Taki, Remuti. Kaya, Kami Shina, Sente Tamji, Yutan, Tome, Sende to the Chimbatang, State Chimbati, and to do the teacher. Tumo Tombatang said that to do women do a chotilla, Tumo Chigari, Tumo Maimba chancing the limited choti, Randu Chigi, Tumo Maimba, Rani Bashi, Chetu, Tarba Tundu, Yichi Pone, send it to the shooting down, shooting teacher. Chola Social Nebato, Netang, Gambata. Gummy Chippy, Shabas. Chola, Social Nebato, Children, Shabas. That's Netan English Shabas, Shabatan. Controla Shabas, that the Condo said the Nijil Jing in better, Shabati. Controla Shabas, Gummy Chippy, Shabas. That patient to Junju, some death and share of La Soba. We took Temba, Temple, Namji, and Batang. And the Temba, Temple, Namji, but you also Toba Trube, Yanda Batoba, Sanji, Tuju, and Yoba. 30 number Queen, Chodan, and Batomba to be Ishini, Jerus, Niji, Tumba Jere, turned to the Susu collections. That is a day to be number Chonde dish. Jerus, remove change the remove G, Jerus, no sort of a Jiba. Take Jerus, Niji, they do number Chonde the something. dKon do that, Namugi,
So then this is a very beautiful description of the analogy in this commentary. Let's see. So both elements of the elements of the path and the result of the path are described in this parable. So the completed painting of the king itself represents the attainment of the form of emptiness that is endowed with every excellence. The action of the painters represent the path's form of that emptiness, of the practices that are referred to as with that same term. So it's described here saying, it says that wisdom of the Buddha, which is always in a state of meditative composure that perceives emptiness directly, and which is also adorned or embellished by all of the elements of the path that represent, the culmination of the elements of the path that represent means, such as generosity and the rest. That wisdom itself is what is meant by the emptiness that is endowed with every form of excellence. And then that is a quality or a state or result that is achieved by practicing the corresponding form of it during the path, which is a form of wisdom that perceives emptiness directly and is a form of concentration that practices shamatha and vipassana jointly, and is also adorned by, that wisdom is also adorned by the means aspect of generosity in the rest, that includes every element of those forms of means. So the merit, the accumulation of merit and wisdom are like the action of painting, which is carried out by those artisans. So it is illustrated in this manner, in this analogy. So what is that? So it says, what are those qualities, he says. So the generosity must be the generosity which is dedicated to the welfare of all sentient beings and is willing to practice a form of generosity in which one has the will, one has the determination to sacrifice one's body, one's wealth, and one's virtue for the sake of others. And that's it, mainly the different forms of generosity. Then, in relation to morality, it has several aspects. The common aspect of morality is the aspect of restraint, the aspect of morality which represents keeping yourself from engaging in those activities which are the opposite of morality, namely non-virtuous deeds. The unique forms of morality are those which involve the volition which rejects any form of thought which is seeking to achieve liberation for one's own exclusive benefit. And those are the two main motivations that accompany Mahayana morality. And in terms of patience, there are three main kinds of, and the point being that all of the aspects that relate to these perfections, paramitas, must be engaged in. In the case of patience, there are three main kinds of patience. The first one that's mentioned is the patience that is a form of forbearance that is gained by the strength of one's knowledge in various subjects that relate to the Dharma, and they produce a kind of forbearance, an ability to endure hardships. The second kind of patience is the patience that accepts suffering, that is willing to endure suffering, to experience suffering and tolerate it. Now, the third one is the form of suffering that does not allow anger, does not give way to anger. And so whatever harm, that's the Növet Sura. Növet Sura means so mainly coming from other persons. So when other persons harm you, that you don't allow that to be a justification for feeling any tendency to want to respond in kind. So it's a form of preventing yourself from developing anger when you're harmed. And similarly, all the different kinds of effort, all the different kinds of one-pointed concentration and wisdom that relate to relative truth subjects that are all the elements of the path, as well as all the elements of the path that relate to ultimate truth, meditating on emptiness. Then when those are all combined in their fullest form, then what is produced by that is all the unique and all the, in every form of excellence, every form of virtuous quality, which is possessed by a Buddha, and which enhance the Buddha's knowledge that perceives emptiness, such that it is described as, it is illustrated by the drawing, completed drawing, the perfect or the full drawing of the king's image, then that is a parable or an analogy which is described in the scriptures, in the sutras. This is an explanation of that, particularly that term, what it implies.
Ratni, Shira ichi namdu nam sedan kodan. Ashita, tade mechi reshime, nime jingu. Tadine shira tang ishi siyati, jitawatu bi shira tang, jingi pato bi ishi. Di jima maripa panda namdu nam, ngongching besis, sawatan. 다시 타데메치 니메진 부르스 나시 니메진 구그리티 니메진 부르체 니메르 셀체 아니 그랬는데 아니 왜 니마르 레서왔지 니메르 셀쇼왔지 니메진 구르 타바 숨부티 모예메레스 뭐 타데 야마레스 어디다 네 제가와도에 전부 이시 대단 진입을 기이시 근데 완전 많은 것 반대 남들 숨부티 모예메레스 상기도
So these are 5 verses. This analogy is still talking about that last point, that 10th topic, about the undifferentiability of the Buddha's quality from the Buddha's ultimate nature. This is described here by that term, the emptiness that is endowed with every form of existence. And another, now following that, one verse, verse 93, which compares that quality of the Buddha's completely pure emptiness, a completely pure nature, to the sun. It says there are 3 qualities: wisdom, knowledge, and liberation. Those qualities, which are characteristics of that same emptiness, are inseparable from that same emptiness in the same way that the brightness and the radiance and the purity or clarity of the sun's rays are inseparable from the sun. And so we have wisdom and knowledge and liberation, these 3 qualities. Those are interpreted as being jita kimbe yishe, jinyeba kimbe yishe. So one way of talking about the wisdom, Buddha's wisdom, is the wisdom that perceives emptiness directly as the way things are. And that's directly absorbed and never not directly absorbed in emptiness, the realization of emptiness. Jinyeba kimbe yishe is that that aspect of the Buddha's knowledge, which is in addition to never wavering from that direct realization of emptiness, being able to have direct awareness of all relative truth objects. In combination with those 2 qualities, then, is the attribute of having abandoned all the temporary obstacles. Therefore, have achieved that liberation, which is quality of truth of cessation. These 3 qualities are comparable to the the brightness, the radiance, and clarity of the sun's light rays, which are themselves inseparable from the sun itself. So this is another analogy.
아따네 Then Sange Mato, Yangan, little Spanish, Mato, University, Tati, and you they see that they there, Wanga Taduki, Yarana Yamaris, the mayor Garesne, the mayor did Sange Mato, in this she tampu Yerba, just a Sange Mato, Yangan, little this, Yandeti, in every Yandeti. Chida Yande Yari. Elder Sepan and Maton in the Sepan and Nimalatan, Mara. That Pubichum should do. And then you may say that tattoo, and mother tattoo, my sin, may say the me. Subi Amarba. Just as you may say that Chivachu in the not to the no. Maybe said, you might go to the other tattoo. Yes, Arias and curiosity. You may the city could Toby Amarva. This should be Amarva. This may read on the Sepan and Nimata wishes.
So then, verse 94, then addressing the same point, saying that then until you achieve Buddhahood, you have not achieved nirvana. But one can infer from that supreme nirvana is the nirvana that is possessed of those four qualities which are associated with Buddha's dharmakaya. And one cannot separate the two. Buddhahood and nirvana are inseparable. And one does not exist distinct from the other. Just as the sun cannot be observed apart from its rays. Then light and its rays, or its rays which are luminous, you can take either way, I guess. So Rinpoche is interpreted that saying that something along the lines that the sun is so bright that one cannot look at the sun because its rays are so strong. That for a young child is not able to gaze at the sun, so to speak.
Another university, Vilisha, in the Shibutisha, in the Shibuti, Matan, young and the two maris, safety made in the Shibutisha. You may receive on has in it, take the Shibuti, the Shibuti, you never told two maris. You may receive on
Or one can think of it this way, that if you remove the light rays from the sun, there is no sun to see. And so one can say that the rays and the light that accompany the light rays of the sun represent those four unique qualities that characterize Buddhahood. So if you take those qualities away, then one cannot see or one cannot identify that as being true nirvana or ultimate nirvana of the sun. Those two are inseparable. In order to be nirvana, it has to be the nirvana that includes the qualities of a Buddha.
rgyud that division number 2 just that TV
All right, so now with verse 95, we get a concluding verse, the first half of which says, this is described as the tenfold presentation that explains the embryo, the victorious ones, the Buddha nature. So it's saying, basically saying that now these 10 topics have been explained. These are the 10 topics, by which those 3 phases of Buddha nature are to be understood.
Come, say around the read
Right.
they come the local bit to make it
Yes.
or that they come local bit to make it push it to us. That is not the issue.
Okay, so now we're starting another subject. This subject is that the dhatu, sattva dhatu, which is the impure form of Buddha nature, right? Then that is covered by the sheaths, kosha, of the temporary stains, right? And there are 9 similes which are presented in the Garbha Sutra, I believe, which describe that condition.
That is Nyumo Pune, Nyumo Punanga, but it again Shevachas. That's NJ is similar in Shingi number Tabati. Nyumo Puna, never tick, Imalubu. Imalubu is Imbala, Yiba, Sengiranshi, Mashu, Peku. Timati, Nyumo Puna, never just standard Sinjagi. Another come read it. Nyumo Puna never is. Inea the Timati Lugo is, Timati Singiranshi, Mashu is. That is my Timalugo is Singiranshi, Mashu.
So the second half of the same verse, 95, says, this matrix, he's talking about the word garbha, right? I call it the embryo. This condition of being an embryo, which is then concealed within the sheath, the covering of the mental afflictions, is to be understood on the basis of similes, which there are 9. And the purpose of these similes is to clarify how the mental afflictions are a covering that obscures the pure nature of the mind within, meaning they prevent us from being able to perceive it, and at the same time, they do not in any way inhere in that nature. They are an external covering. They are separate from it, so to speak. No. So this topic is contained in the form of 9 similes, and those 9 similes have 9 corresponding interpretations. So there are 18 points or 18 topics explaining the similes and then the interpretation of the similes. So maybe the easiest way, they're not so difficult. So let's go through the verses at least in a kind of quick way to at least identify them.
Penges Tenji Jama Sesuma.
Sangye
Bema
Zitan.
Sangye Pengen Jet, Tenji Jet, Jama Jet, Bemba Jet, Ningu Jet, Tatusu Peking Nishe Uduga. Sangye Bema Jet, Bema Nimbus Jet, Tenji Jama Yari Jet. Bemba la Ningu Metama, and the Pumba Pinula Ningu Jet. Yungi Juicy Jay
Everybody Chilo, your papa.
Papa, Ina Ningu Yarba, Nezana says, Nezana Sai, Walla, and Seria says, Nezana says, Sala Terdan, Taya. Immediately to the area of the G. And you saw the Chunitan said, I go to sober to soon, you know, sober to Tongo to soon. They were Chuniki Yarba, I'm the Tongo tea, I'm the Martayagi.
Savadi.
Sabi chung jile. Am chimba tiya niba tiya ba. Oh, tadi surche. Ani terche. Guru nana kya ko suki. And guru pichaji nali sangi ji kochi. Ji ne twaji shashagi na. Topachina, Ulotopachina, teacher Shavina, I think Shavi, the Bonachi Marie, the coaching my Habu Marva, dinner, the Lucy, and you could but Habu Marva. Young sir, Guru and Karaputan, Ling and Net on us. Now, you mean Dumayarva, Pigiton. Jadi di Pulau Cina, jadi primiti nyambati yang satu, jadi ni tak boleh jadi tongsian marba, kena jadi boleh jadi tuan yang yang, aku jadi namanya deh, yang sudah. Tongjia never change some Panguji, Nepanguji, Omuji, Toana, Gabriel to put it to Pila, the me charge of Jimaba. Oh, remaining in Rebana, Nitata, Nita, Pacific, Gabriel. Story Chitawa, Lugu, that didn't see. Did Chitawa into around Lugu, Senjegi, Jula, Shinedi, Yarity, Lugu, native the only, Senjedi, the she come to never be. She marries. That is it. And that is it in a champion way. That is that. That didn't matter. That did the growth of the check. Thought. Thought. Shouldn't watch it. That you are getting Marty. That is Jackie Mambuga, Jimapena, Soja, Kumbang, Sashuga. That imagine did. That demand Tung Sushi is. Pematan, Sojadan, Imbatan, Mezamatan, Sardan, Yebutan, Gurutan, Dunyan Barre, 원벌 동대 예매당 세 감당 총벌 시럽 시가 자우 란신기 지만 다디 란신기 지만에 감초 총벌이 시가 자우 강당 총신아 산계니 부당 다디 Benesi sange benesi adi sange ni kudangs adi pemala charati pemenala sange ni ku meto pemala ya sange ni kuchina ti atum shana meto pemala kasungje devina
So,
odi sange kudang 정지 기 소자시게 정지기 장마도 정지야 봐 이게 소자시게 배마 소자 인바 미성 대대 배구도래 지지 구도가 배마제
okay,
소자제
okay.
인바제 미장어제 사제 제부제 구유제 동행벌에
Okay.
number tung imici sai kamche odati kuduga
That it?
ikiji kudije ba
Chichi Gurdwa.
tadine sangi kuje ande sangi kuje tadija kuje
Okay.
sangi kuje endije ani
Nimbo.
Ninguje, Serge, Theg, Nakutarche, Linji Gudans, Linda Chos, Lingitabu, Linji Sudan, Chusum, Tadi Linji Sudan, Chusum, Shiva Chawu said.
Well, that's
That teacher Buddha Spema that teaching Guru teaching Guru shares one. Teacher Guru shares. That teach.
This is a rather long section of verses that explains these 9 similes. It starts on verse 96, where the similes are first described. And then, so verses 96, let me see if I can find 96 and 97 are a brief introduction to these. Like the Buddha in an ugly lotus flower, 1. Like honey surrounded by bees, 2. Like kernels of grain covered by the husk, 3. Like gold fallen into impurities, 4. Like treasure under the ground, 5. Like a sprout that, I think it's eventually a tree grown from a small seed. Like a Buddha statue or image wrapped in a tattered cloth or garment. This is verse 96. That's some of it. Like the king to be, who is the embryo in the womb of a poor woman, is I've lost count on it. That's number 8, is it? Yeah, okay, number 8. And then like a precious statue inside a mold of clay, of earth. These are the, no. Jidan Jimmy Serbar Leche Sai Nang Chugu Suk Direct. That's all right.
Jidan Dongi Bene Kone Ba.
Jidan What Suksa di Jidan Rinjin Leche Kepura.
Dol tema di Kevashe. Dol tema da Peta Kami. Macha. Da Peta di Tadi di Kema Jidan Dongi.
Jidan Dongi Peme Kunin Ba.
Oh, tadi ba. 이게 때마다 산제스 세소나. 지단 동에 빼면 콩내 봐스. 산제 천동 바로 디시시 반에 세다디 빼면 콩내 산제 구세 주바. 어디 빼면 디치치체 이야디 산제 구티체. 달 천동 바로 디시시 반에 지미 타이 민데 미 통내 추기 다음에 부내 지금까지 디신세 대달
Jimen Sai Mi Tone. 아니 전시 자가.
됐지. 다시 빼면 담아 순대 콩나스 네베 센삼부 동이 바르에 예베 디시시베 군이스 아다티 제자들 지진이 되지소나. 다 지민 하이 미간 된데 미 통내 추기 다음에 부내 그 짐바지가 디신도스 다티 연디 잘서디 디시시바 남미 디시시바 남미 내는 레라 산제 쟁이 랑추 스리디스 다 디시시베 디시시바 산제기 쟁이 남미는 내베 야와 남미는 내베 심제나마양 랑이 춘이 유여바 우승도 시티 이네 하만 된도 스타 시티에서 시버에서 단기 녀나미데 가사리 줄이양 디시시베 디 야리스 다티 전다티 배망인데 그나 산기 구여바 디 디페바 디페체 왠지 나름의 가사리 유다 승계의 시유세 디디 유바티 왠지체 디스 아란주 또 투야마르바 산기 시비아리스 유바티
Sure. Okay, so I think we're trying to cover more ground, and rather than go through each of these similes, which are very carefully formulated and then explained, who kind of wants to do the explanation and the presentation kind of all at once. So it starts. We have verse 96 and verse 97 formulating the similes, and then you have verse 98, 99, and 100 separating out the obscuring element and the Buddha nature that's obscured in 9 different ways. Right? And then following that, identifying those 18 elements, then we have verses starting at verse 101, I believe, that, verse 99 actually, verse 99, 100, and 101, which give an interpretation of the simile. Because those 99, 100, and 101 are an interpretation of the first simile. The first simile is that of a Buddha image, which is concealed inside a lotus flower, an unattractive lotus flower, that the petals of which are closed. So then the verse 99, 100, 101, then mentions the simile and then also explains. So I think that's allows us to skip the part of explaining the simile on its own. So by reading it, suppose the Buddha shining with 1,000 marks. This is verse 99, sort of describing the Buddha. That's the Buddha nature, right? We're abiding in the inside of a faded lotus flower. Okay, that's sheath that's covering it. And a man of immaculate divine sight. So saying a human being, a person who possesses the divine eye, is able to see that which is hidden. And then release that Buddha from the sheath of the flower petals, the unattractive flower petals. That's the simile. Then it says, similarly, like that, the Lord, meaning Buddha, this is now verse 100. The Lord, assume that's Bhagavan, the Sugata. Okay, so the Sugata, the Dosherpa, with his Buddha eye, perceives his own nature, right? Even within those who are in, and it says, in English it says in the lowest world, but I think, in the lowest world is Avicii, even in the Avicii hell. Even the beings who are in the Avicii hell, those are the most miserable of all sentient beings that exist. Inside them exists this same potential to be a Buddha. And so the Buddhas themselves see that ability of a Buddha as a Buddha inside them, and perceives his own nature, even in those who are in the lowest world. And being immaculate, standing at the utmost limit, and being full of compassion, he releases them, meaning those beings there, from their obscurations. And then the verse 101 says, just as a person with divine sight perceives a faded and ugly lotus flower and the Buddha within it, and rends asunder the petals, in the same way the Lord perceives the world as possessing the matrix of the Buddha, covered with the sheath of the stains of desire, hatred, and ignorance, etc., and destroys it. He says he kills it, but I think he destroys those coverings, those obscurations, out of compassion. So those three verses are addressing the first simile.
Tadi sesuna. Tadi ani Khensur Sangye kita tadi disuna. Tadi berarti jidan itu biasa sumber tere sebeni dKon saya kone tip sarva.
Di maritam di kalsa memang yang bagi nalia Sangye ko.
Nalia.
Juga di kalsa Tangzi.
Oh, ada Tangzi tidak? Ada Tangzi tidak juga. Ada Tangzi. Ada Tangzi. Jidar Tangzi, jidar Tangzi soja Jawa Treatise. Jidar soja Jawa Tangzi ni ibu kere ke English 전등여와이 통원의 특기 대당 소자 소 군의 대화를 제바인 다 리더를 소자 아니 무엔 소지 거를 장지디 기부 개발 장지디 전등여에 다 장지디 무엔 소지 그 장지디 아니 기부 개발이 장지 전등여에 기부 개발이 장지디 랭고를 봐. 내가 전등여에 통내 특기 장지 대당 소자 무엔 소군 대화를 이해하시고 장지 내가 얘가 소자를 장지걸 장바디파 이어를 봐. 장지당 소자 장지 가르사 공안디 소소리에 봐. 이어는 신스 다디 연다들가 이 진짜 장마던다와 대내를 통한테 스타타티 상계기 장송 친구스 장송 친구 꾸기기 쟁기 이 장지단다 신내스 다 리티 아란디기 리티 장지다와 신분의 나라의 장지다와 디인거제第一个新的让送根据人生阶级群因为你看跟这张知道吧说就懂了吧第新的人用不起的这都是你收价的的怎么的怎么发生阶级怎么讲的第怎么长么等着了等于是然后不管这是的生阶级看不是给他把第怎么讲的长么等着他这个的怎么不能来讲吧让生阶级看不心里的经济怎么知道吧第장만대 단다와체 네 장만대 좀 버체 지지도 좀 버체 상계의 지지도 좀 버체 버리스 아니 장지디 링티 세월 제베 터디 좀 버리시게 터디
So the second simile is that of honey, which is covered by bees. And so in the first verse describes the simile itself. Then suppose a clever person seeing honey surrounded by, it says, a cloud of bees, completely encompassing a source of honey. Then that clever person wishing to get it must use some skillful means to remove, to deprive the bees completely of it. Really remove the bees in order to gain access to the honey. That's the simile. Then the second one is describing how the Buddhas act. So then the clever person is the great Rishi, right, the great sage, which is referring to the Buddhas, possessed of the eyes of omniscience, perceives this Buddha nature, which resembles honey, in that it is sweet. Its nature is always has that same quality of sweetness that never changes, and the Buddha exposes that essence by removing the bees, which are like the obscurations from beings, which are like the bees covering that honey, but which are not inherent in the honey, and he does this in a complete manner.
là 잘할 샤샤는
좋소.
아직은 남부도가 다 지더라 본데 루이민군에서 다지 멤버기 나는 이런 루이민군에서 매년 있기는 제자를 민주로가 매년이 너무 제자를 누구 말이죠 누구나 여봤지 다 세서 전도미와 강인 받지 다 괜히 괜히 친구다 다세 전도미와들이 니 니부디 괜히 멤버디 나네 친구를 지해봐 친구를 지어나시 네 상계기 생제 라이 명이 지마다 상계기 생제 유래 명문대 지메 부나 부단 제베 아니 감디 아니 명문이 지마스 제네 네르티 아니 잘해서 제다 자왕 지시도 명문 지메 지메 마주와 지시 겐데 겐데 세순 도미지스 다 자의 인구 지시도 명문대 지버티스다 자와 상계기 인구 아니디 지시도 명문대 지버티스도 이제 명문대 제네네 지시도 아니 좋아 누구 말봐 상계기 그만 터봐 누구 말봐 마주와 지시도 자외 제가 스스로 집에서 이 매집은 아시 아니 매집을 해서 아니 매집에 상계 중된 대기 남기 생제 남기 상계特别 체도 디규기 정말 서비스 다 생제 상계기 상계 그만 터가는 가리고에서는 본대는 하는 애들 민국 대단가와 선제기 지내는 하는 애들 대신 민국이 아니 정말 마세나 네 제가 숨도까지 상기를 잡았던 두 말봐 에버 예상 선제기 아니 본대는 하는 애들 그것들은 애들 지내는 하는 애들 민국이 이 그렇지도 맞지 서치기 상계 이시선제가 주의 온주 명모 도래 마주가 명모지가 다지지 되리 간지.
So the third simile is described in verses 105, 106, and 107. And looking primarily at 105 and 106, the third simile is that of the kernel of grain that lies inside the husk. So the husk is defilements and mental afflictions, and the Buddha nature is the kernel that is covered, lies inside. So the first verse describes the simile as saying that the kernel of grain, that as long as it remains covered by its husk, it's not edible to be consumed. So therefore, the person, in a general way, who wants to use the grain that is still covered by the husk as food has to remove the husk. So similarly, then the husk is like the potential Buddha that lies within living beings and yet exists in a polluted state as long as the stains of the defilements are covering it. And until it is free from those defilements, then that kernel is not able to manifest the Buddha's activities throughout the three realms.
되겠네.
네.
다음에 기다려도 그때 내 있을 전제들을 나도 통주가 민지 추진되는 들으시시 노점 마보다 내버티 상이 다다 당된 사이들을 통해 내가 되는 뒤유세 유레세 민지 통주 전대 민지 이 그걸 저 기시 매버다 미시 람도 주에스 아니 세기겐 아니 세기겐 젠지 주변은 미상에 산지럽지 미상에 주변은 통을 따라 통을 줄라스 세르라는 란도 멤버 미주에스 미지 추진되니 뭔가 지다를 이러고 신도 미상에 내들 로자장만 다도 내거나 하이미일단 때문에 대신 이력을 통해 내가 되는 세기 렌포치 야리 장디 렌지 그걸 잘했을 때 라바나시 그 대신 다티 빼들봐 빼디 미지 남도 좋아지 지는 수수 겐지 겐지나는 총내로 자자만 되는 양 네 세기 겐지 모두 좋아야 말이스 이 때문에 사람이 민단 데마지기 되는 테리아 디알렌스 시키다만이 요가 듣는 게 여봐 이게 되지 다 되는데 라이시네리들이 겐지가 나도 통해 됐다 되는데 자세히 지바를 대신 그게 내장 당자를 명무수 증생 명무수 증생제 유대니 시네스 따뜻해 이 대단하다 나란지가 라시네리 지아바 라시네리티 너무 됐네 tunduya maris tinge tungati numu semjegi de tisine ne tubetne numu ne suje semjegi ki yendena na shi number taba semjegi yuba sine tati sine ani tinjumbe numu 그걸 세 특별한 진지를 봐. 명문 담지 대달 이체를 일부 남라. 담지 추전될 명문의 전진하는 이르되 아니 시다들 신내리티 제마티스를 치고 담지 잡아내 버리스. 어디 안한다. 라신내리티 이르버티 Genetic speak genetic selection and Sanjay and the Tamju children is
So then the next one, the fourth simile, is a gold that has fallen into a filthy place. Verses 108 through 111. And it says, suppose a traveler would happen to drop a piece of gold in a place filled with impurities, some like in a sewer. Then, and that gold, having been lost, would stay there for a long period of time. Despite the passage of time, I'm sort of amplifying the verse, it would not change. It remains gold. It does not lose its gold nature. Then, that's verse 108. 109 then says, then a god, again, someone who possesses the pure divine eye that sees things which humans can't see, we're to be able to recognize that that gold is in that place. And he were to tell a man or someone, oh, there's a piece of gold there, which is pure and very precious. You should clean it off and make use of it as a treasure. So that's 109. Then, like that, the Buddha perceives that pure quality, that precious quality that resides in all living beings, those which is sunken, which has sunk, that pure quality is into the pit, the sewage of the defilements. And so then the Buddha, by teaching the Dharma, pours the rain of the doctrine on the living beings, and that washes away the impurities to reveal the gold that lies inside. Then the Buddha, so it says, just as a God, and then verse 111 sort of repeats that point and makes a connection. Just as a God, perceiving a piece of gold, the most beautiful, and fall into a dirty place filled with impurity, would show it to the people in order to purify it from dirt. In the same way, the Buddha, perceiving the treasure of the Buddha in living beings, that Buddha nature that is like gold, which has fallen into a big pit of the impurities of defilements, teaches the doctrine to living beings in order to purify that treasure, in order to make that treasure manifest.
But that is the Jita may tuna. So,
Let it.
That than the children, that is Chasa Kangulo Rashini, that
So all of these similes, you should recall, is referring specifically to the innate form of the spiritual lineage, the ultimate nature of the mind, which is immaculate and has that valuable quality.
Semi chungi jam, Matopene Ule Naman, people do Vision, Semjeki, and other children, they should come to Jungu, the Jigita, Jig, Jamaica, Tami, Satu, Shaku never come. Or Tami is up Shaku never come. Tami, Satu, Satu never. Timothy, Shimitan, Rangi, Giva, Mato Bena, Habet, many number of people being that is Shada said it. I mean, you would be subways, treated Tamita Casa, I mean, you would be a sub, whichever married. Come on, never net Tamiri. Casa, Tamiri, Chia, Tamiri. Tami put the Sato Shamamari. Imani put the Sato Samari, Kansure, Shri Tata 가사리 다미니부티 취기 다다 가사리 다미니부티 살도 가르수에 세월 말이 예만에 세세가 다미가 예스 니샤단스데 아메니 살도 그때는 샤바에 말이 나는 다미가 임버래 아니 다도 그러니까 살도 세월 말이 나만에 다도 맞거든 예스 가게 다도 그가 최다다 주의다다 가서 다니기 살도 세게 말아 나만에 가서 뭐 맞거라 이제 뒤충이 되는 줄 야르가 야르디 아니 이하라도 지지기 이바디만 진행 마통하러 봐 그래서 그게 동행이 아니 단속도 하는 게 동행이 라인에 대야 디디스 아니 상계기 다디 아니 상계 디디도 이든도 kutambares 대다 남기 대도 자체 지견도 장송이 양자 땅 세. 다들
So,
이샤다 세면세 누가
So this is simile 5. Simile 5 is the essence, the Tathagata nature is like a treasure of jewels that lies under the ground of a house, inside a house, under the ground of a poor man. So the treasure is there, but the poor man, because he's not aware of it, has to continue to endure his or her poverty, sort of ironically, as suggested. So the earth under which that treasure lies is the symbol or metaphor for the defilements. And the Buddha nature is the treasure of jewels, the cache of jewels, which is lying hidden beneath. So the 3 verses that relate to this start by describing the symbol. Suppose there were an inexhaustible treasure under the ground within the house of a poor man. However, the nature of this man is that he is not aware of that treasure, nor does the treasure do anything to say to him, to announce to him, I am here, come find me. Then, similarly, and this verse, this is now the 2nd verse. And in the Tibetan of the 2nd verse, there's a phrase that Gyumed Khensur kind of paused and discussed, where he emphasized the importance of these 2 qualifying phrases. So then it says, like that, right? So now we're interpreting the verse, the simile. So similarly, and then it says, similarly, there is a treasure of though there is a treasure consisting of an immaculate jewel, and that's Asanga. Rinpoche Gyumed. Rinpoche Gyumed means the immaculate treasure of an immaculate jewel. Then it says inconceivable, inexhaustible, which are described as inconceivable.
Anything is said, just the
Shotgun.
샤우스야디 다밍이부터 사도 샤바 말이스. 나만에 아라시메바티 임버리 등하는 또 비야마라. 세르타 도그테 아무테르타 보기 린팅한 수비 여바체. 강배월에 때리야르바. 코 강배월에 때리야르 강배 다 로지게야르. 때릴 때 다와야르. 그 마토아이사니 그 동에서 두개 말아. 이내시 나는 동에서야기 리티 나중에 대단히 필요해. 가지고 싶어. 이내야티 아니 라는 맛이 아니 등에 그랬더니 뭐하러 이 산티 다음에 이부디 사도 샤도 말이스. 토마 매번에 다미리스. 알아준 셈기 토마 매번에 다미니 원내지야. 아니 가지 이부디 사도 셈 말이스. 가지 세다 다 최다 다무 아사도 다니부디 사도 셈 말이스. 세미스. 셈 말봐. 사도 셈 말. 냐만에 세세브라고 그런 거.
So there's an interesting phrase here that I'm trying to find it in the Sanskrit or the English. It doesn't seem to be there. But it's in the second verse, which says, a treasure of an immaculate jewel. And then we have inconceivable, inexhaustible properties in the mind. And then it says, the living beings of the world, without knowing it, without being aware of their own Buddha nature, constantly experience the suffering of poverty and various ways. That's very straightforward. That obviously is saying that by not realizing our Buddha nature, then we are forced to continue to experience samsara suffering. But in the Tibetan, in the second line of this verse, it says, Gyumed, this stainless treasure jewel, right? So it does say treasure of an immaculate jewel, and that I find is Amala Ratnagotravibhāga. Then it says Shaktan Selme in the Tibetan. Now that's interesting because what it says in the Sanskrit is says Achintyam and Akshaya. Achintyam means that it's then not known, right? And so here we have inconceivable, an inconceivable treasure and an inexhaustible treasure. But the Tibetan seems to correspond to those two terms, inconceivable and inexhaustible, and it says Shaktan Selme, and that's an interesting point that is often found in Mahayana doctrine, which is considered very important. So shakpa means to be placed, and selva means to be eliminated. So it's saying that, so the Rinpoche said, that treasure is not something which the treasure is the symbol for the insubstantiality of the person and the insubstantiality of entities. Emptiness. Both of them are emptiness. That emptiness is not some quality that was placed newly there for us to understand. It's always existed. So it's not something that is, or another way to put it is that when we achieve a realization of that selflessness, we don't create that selflessness when we realize it. It's always been there. So it's not something new that is generated by our realization of it. Also, the fault and the idea of the mind's nature as being self-existent as well. that's not something that needs to be eliminated, because it has never existed in the first place. So that idea of nothing to achieve, nothing to get rid of, that is a kind of theme in doctrine of emptiness. There's no self-existent quality to gain. There's no self-existent stain to get rid of, in an ultimate sense. So that also is a way of understanding emptiness. We do remove the stains. We do achieve realizations, but they're not something substantial that didn't exist and then comes into being when we realize it, because it's not self-existent. And the obstacles themselves are not real obstacles that we somehow have to get in touch with and then sweep them away like real self-existent obstacles. So that's a very subtle notion that Rinpoche sort of is wanted to bring to our attention here in this second verse. Okay. So that somehow that seems to be in this inconceivable and inexhaustible. Those two adjectives. Obviously, I don't see how it relates to those two words in particular, but it's in the Tibetan. So Rinpoche mentioned it. And then says the third verse, 114. Just as a treasure of jewels in the house of a poor man would not say to him, I am here, nor the man could know, here's a treasure of jewels. Likewise is a treasure of properties dwelling in the house of the mind. The living beings are like a poor man. Living beings meaning samsaric living beings. To make those people obtain this treasure, to give them the treasure of knowing their own true nature, then the last part of the verse says, the sage, Buddha Shakyamuni, then carries out the activity of taking birth in the world to reveal this to beings. The sage makes his appearance in the world, means that the sage, Buddha Shakyamuni, takes birth just from one of the 12 deeds. Not Saturday. That's 5.
난주 마통어체 강내들이 별투야 말이스. 이 책은 강내들이 별투야 미치도 사이 최수미야 사이 군담이야 사이전 책이야 두수 아니 생기디 리디 통야를 치. 페브레스였다. 어디에서는 난주에 빅디다 동양이 다시 제국이었다. 빅디만 구안에 들어두란 말이야. 동일에 들어두란 말이야. 이 죄를 치도 산지기 주자를 버렸어. 숨기 주자를 버렸어.
주자를 배워.
숨기 주 잡아. 주승 버려. that is 간단 남네도 간도 제도다. 간단 제도스 바자 정신이야. 저게 바자샤스 저게 바자샤. 바자샤들이 야네한테 제스는 바자디야. 거는 컴퓨터 들어야 봐. 어디 인상 아니 딱히 어디시야.
So as we listen to these similes, we should take away the understanding that they are a means of informing us of the fact that we all possess this precious quality which is not something that lies at some great distance that we have to go looking for. It lies within our own minds. And it's merely something, it's merely the fact that it's hidden from us that we suffer from. So, and as we listen to these similes, we should take away the idea that this is something that we need to strive to discover for ourselves. And moreover, the reason that the Buddhas, the very reason that the Buddhas appeared in the world was in order to teach us to gain that ability. The reign of the Dharma was caused to fall so that we could wash away the impurities that keep us, don't allow us to be able to see this precious quality. So we should be inspired by these similes as a means of learning about a difficult subject, something that is difficult to describe directly, and we should then, as the similes themselves are not difficult to understand, and we have sort of an innate ability to appreciate the poetic, the import of this poetic imagery, and the result is that it will plant an impression in our mind of what these similes are talking about. And the more we plant those seeds in our mind, then the greater the opportunity and the possibility to ultimately gain the understanding that they are describing. And so we should think of this, with some seriousness. So in connection with that, then the most important way to gain an understanding of this nature that is very near at hand, that lies within us, is to listen and learn the instructions that give us the means to meditate on emptiness. Meditating on emptiness itself is the best way to then. Jhana is a word which means it means a number of things. It means to purify. It means to refine. It also means to remove flaws. So then here the verb is being used with the Buddha nature. So we have to, I think in English we would say we have to purify ourselves, or we have to refine ourselves in such a way to gain an understanding of this Buddha nature that exists already. And so meditating on emptiness is the best way to do that. Then usually in connection with the topic of developing an understanding of emptiness, then collecting merit or gaining merit by engaging in virtuous activities is described as a necessary condition to enable that particular kind of meditation, higher meditation, to be successful, to be able to bring it to a successful culmination. In the case of the Buddha nature, the best form of merit, accumulated merit, is to cultivate those Mahayana virtues of compassion, loving kindness, and bodhicitta. And by doing so, by cultivating those forms of merit, those forms of virtuous qualities, we are in fact doing the activities that refine and enable us to develop the second form of the Buddha nature. So the innate form of the Buddha nature is what's realized by the wisdom that perceives emptiness. And the cultivating the virtuous minds is what causes that innate Buddha nature to develop, and its developed form to then be further enhanced.
That's good.
So with that, what's your one interesting one question?
Yeah.
Rinpoche, I have two quick questions.
20 years.
I can't sleep if I can only ask one question. So they're very quick, they're very short. The first one is about when we talk about space and as a metaphor of constituent element, because it has all the characters of unchangeable, insubstantial, very subtle, and untainted by anything that's within it. And as we talk about space, often we also talk about time and space. And time and space do have some similar characteristics of having no boundary, infinite, unaffected by anything that occurs within it. So if we say that space is a metaphor of the constituent element, so could time be seen that way as well? That's my first question. The second question is about emptiness or absence of inherent existence with relation to nirvana. In the Pranavita Sutra, it talks about all of that, and then at the end, it mentioned about nirvana, which is also included in having no inherent existence. So in that case, which nirvana is it referred to?
In Prajnaparamita Sutra?
Yes. Thank you. Maybe the first question first.
Good. Tambuti. Rasa. Branchini Ripila. Namkata Chetsumbares. Ruameva, Magrava, Tameva, Sunyore. Then the Namkati Kamgi Takasa Pesolki, the Sigonashin, do say the do that should do some do took do the young. But did not see my rest. There is in due dilla and it Zoya Maris, what time ever, David Dill. There's a gotram say or my moment de toxa mewer today. And the duty tamary imbanasi and the young duty kamla and that they are sort of best so to do the rest of you. And it dictated.
That beauty guys, Nagati, any Tanjali cover. Duty that duty duty mobile children, we should have children marriage. Duty mobile children, could you say no? Did you say the mobile? Did you say the
No,
and duty children marriage?
No, he doesn't think that time is has the same ability to describe the constituent element. In time is something that only is understood or only has meaning in relation to impermanent entities. Time, our concept of time derives from the way that we observe change among impermanent things. And those impermanent things don't constitute a suitable way of conveying the meaning of the constituent element.
Didn't you like dbye? Dbye tambo, dbye niba to support duty.
No.
Duty dbye she didn't go. Duty dbye she didn't. And the dbye then she made Nagati.
No.
Yatavanashi. The seniority. Mola Kimeleva Mashusirba. You can't take it. You can't do it. You work with the
Also, time is something that is also a quality of the impurities. We say that the obstacles and those stains that do not taint the Buddha nature, we can think of them in terms of time. First moment of a mental flaw, second moment of a mental flaw. So time is associated with the flaws, but the nature of the constituent element is that it is untainted. It is completely separate from the stains. Stains do not affect it in any way. So it doesn't seem to be that time is a suitable way to describe its Inicikti. No, you weren't supposed to ask the second question. But anyway, what was it? That the Shichiki don't know Yanel Devati, the Somiare, Yanel Deva Shinki Juba Neva today. Shichiki don't know Tata. Ranshiki maybe Yangde the Kendachil Gogres.
I think Yangde said it, Rashi made a cry. Rashi Yanel Deva said it. Rashi Yangi and Dusha. Yedu Kardam Jinga to the Ranshing Yanel Devasi. Only Koran Ranshing Yanel Devasi. The Ranshing Yanel to Karishas in the Moshe Yamari. Ranshing Yanel Jindusha. The car chatted Ranshing Yanel Devasi.
Actually, in the Panchaparamita Sutras, they use the word nirvana not as a noun, but as a past participle. It's not his words, but it's a way to convey what he said, which is to say, sometimes we say the word empty, use the word empty, that things are empty, they're void. But we also say they are then, what is it? How do you make a verb out of nirvana? But they are transcendent. They are beyond sorrow, to use the Tibetan phrase. What that means is it's not talking about nirvana as something different from samsara, but it's saying that the nature of all entities, samsaric and otherwise, is that they have never been self-existent. So so the absence of self-existence is what it means to say that all entities are, in a sense, already delivered or already transcended or they have a transcendent quality, is that they are not self-existent. So that's a kind of unique use of the word. Sometimes pure, let's say things are pure in the sense that they lack any self-existing quality. And in a sense, they are free from samsaric condition in the sense that they lack any self-existence. So that's a kind of unique way of thinking of things as already being pure, already being free of imperfection. So to say that things are naturally in a state of nirvana means that they are void of self-existence. That first verse, you recite. Gelden duje come. That come is what we're talking about.